We started Module 7 on Friday, and we're learning to kind of build an Excel application. A couple things that we learned you can use defined names, which helps us understand our formulas a little bit better, just makes things a little more user-friendly. We also saw that we can do data validation on cells. When we give someone cells the input, we can say, hey, it has to be text, or it has to be a number between these two values, or it has to be a date. We can also provide a drop-down. So as we know, if we can control the input, it can make our output a lot better and cleaner. We also saw that we can protect cells. So if we hand over or build an application in Excel that we're handing over to someone, and we don't want them to change the important content like the formulas, we can lock those cells and turn on workbook. We can lock the workbook. So what do we want to do today? And this is once again Module 7. Is we want to build or work on building macros. And anyone know what a macro is? Oh, you ever use macros, Steve?
Yeah, we made one in a couple of different last classes. It was like little things that real
Okay. So a macro is a way to generate code, lines of code that do some certain functions. So when is that beneficial? Well, let's say I need to do something over and over and over again, the same repetitive action. Well, I can do that over and over again in Excel, or I can create a macro to do that and then just run the macro, right? It's like almost making yourself like a machine that does what you want it to do. That's the beautiful thing about programming and coding. And behind the scenes in Excel, it uses something called Visual Basic, is the programming language. So programming languages all certainly have some similarities. We're going to do some things with it today. But what we need to do first is we need to turn on our developer tab. So I'm going to pull up winter.xlsx, and you guys may not have a developer tab. Do you guys all have a developer tab? Yes, no? We have the developer tab? No, okay. So you should only have to turn this on once, but if we go to File, go to Options, and you see Customize Ribbon. Go to click on Customize Ribbon. And I'm not sure what yours looks like, but it may already be on the right-hand side here, not checked. Is that what it looks like, Lauren? Yeah. So turn that on, okay? So we're going to turn on the Developer tab. And if I click OK, you should now have a Developer tab. So you guys have that now? Yes? Okay. So a couple things. Macros are kind of scary things. The reason they're kind of scary things is, it's code, and I can put good things in the code that do like important productive things, but I can also write viruses, okay? I can write things that, maybe could do something to your computer. So Excel has certain safeguards in it, like where they can treat macros a certain way. So one thing I want you to look at right now is go to the Developer tab and go to Macro Security. Do you see the little checkbox says Macro Security? And up above, this is a global setting for your version of Excel. It says, what do you want to do when you encounter macros? Meaning, when you are faced with a workbook that has a macro, you can say, disable them, right? Because I know there might be malicious codes and it doesn't even tell you about it. That's really not a good option. Disable all macros with notification. So what that'll do is when you open up macro-enabled workbook, it'll say, hey, this contains macros, they've been disabled. Would you like to enable them? So you can opt in, and usually we'll say yes. Disable all macros except digitally signed macros. That would mean macros that are trusted. Let's just go with the second option, whatever option you have. Let's just go with that second. You can enable all as well. That kind of opens you up if you do encounter a virus. But let's go enable all macros, okay? Okay, what we're going to do to build our first macro, and hopefully you open the winter workbook, and basically one of the things we're trying to provide is and I think I have, yeah, think I have sheet protection off. So let's make sure we have sheet protection off. So yeah, so I'm not protected now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide an input area for someone to enter, register these kids, and it builds a receipt that we may want to print for the customer. So what I want to do is I want to, over and over again, you think about it, every kid that comes in to register soccer, I'm going to fill out the information, and then I'm going to print them a receipt. Okay, I'm going to say, take this area, that's my print area, print it to a PDF perhaps, and I'm going to do that over and over and over again, and I won't want to have to do those things over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a macro that does that for me. So I want you to go to the Developer tab again, and I want you to click on Record Macro. You see it up here? And I want you to notice this ready box. Click on Record Macro. Okay, well, not quite yet. We need to give it a macro name, so let's call this PDF receipt. I'm using inner capping there. So we're building a little macro PDF receipt. My shortcut key, let's use Control R, so just put an R in that box. Shortcut keys, that's, you know, we do Control C for copy, Control V for paste. We're going to build a macro, a shortcut key to knock off this macro. We can store macros a few different places. We're going to store this one in this workbook, but there's other options here. That means this macro would only be available if we store it in this workbook. It's only available in this workbook when we have this workbook open. But say you're doing something, I don't know, maybe you're an auditor and you do something over and over again in many workbooks, you can store it in what's called your personal macro workbook, and then whatever, it's local to your version of Excel, so whatever worksheet you have up, you have access to that workbook. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a tool you take with you no matter what workbook you look at. Or you can install it in its own workbook, and then anytime you want it, maybe you have like end of month tax things you do. You could say, well, just for now, I want to open up this new workbook and have access to those modules. Does that make sense? So right now, I'll just leave it in this workbook. So we're storing it as part of this workbook, this code. I can have a description. I might as well, that's called metadata, data about data. So I'm going to write a description here. I'm going to say this macro was created on 02/20/2017 to print a PDF version of the registration. And then when I click OK, you'll notice it goes down here from ready. I click OK to I'm now in record mode. Okay, what that means is all the actions I'm going to take, those actions are being recorded. And what it's doing is it's saying, this is the code for this action so that I can repeat it over and over again. So here's what we're going to do. So we're in record mode. You see that little stop button down there. What we're first going to do is we're going to select the range A18 down to F37. Okay, so that receipt area. And I'm going to go to the page layout tab. And I'm going to go to the print area group. And I'm going to say set print area. What that does is when I print, I can print just an area. And that I've defined that as my print area. That receipt is my print area at this point. I'm going to go to the page setup area. So click on the little drop down, the little expansion, I guess it is. Go to margins. And we're going to center this thing horizontally. I'm going to click OK. So this is like the pre-work I need to do before I print this. Then I'm going to go to File, Now, instead of printing it to a printer, I'm going to export this to a PDF. So go down to Export in Backstage View. Go to Create PDF XPS. In the file name, let's call it Registration Receipt.
Should ours have the PDF at the end in the file name?
It'll be okay. Let's just save it. Well, save it wherever you like. I'm going to save this on my desktop. And see where it says Open File After Publishing? Check that box, leave it checked, and click Publish. I don't have a PDF viewer on here. Do you guys have PDF viewers? This didn't work. All right, so I'm just using Chrome. Okay. Let's go back then to Excel. And you can close that PDF file. Click on the print area again. Go to Clear Print Area. And then select A1, and then click Stop. Which is down in the bottom corner. Okay. Let's change some things here. Let's change the name. I don't know, from Kristen to John. Let's change maybe the grade level. I don't care. Change some things. And now let's try to run this macro. So we're going to go to Developer, Macros, and you'll see there's a macro stored called PDF Receipt. I'm going to click Run. Okay. And what it did was basically ran all of those steps that I told it to run again and print the PDF. So it did all those things that we did at first. It set the print area, exported the PDF, all those good things. So it's replicable. Does that make sense? Change the name again. Change the youth name to, I don't know, whatever you want. Change your guardian to something as well. And let's try to kick this macro off a little bit differently. Let's do Control R. Okay, remember that was the shortcut key that we assigned to that macro. Document not saved. Click debug.
Is there any way to unprotect the sheet if you happen to forget the password for the sheet?
Nope.
All right. Just check.
What was the password that?
Pretty secure though.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do. I don't know how to do it.
Did you get in that error message?
Same one I got.
It says runtime error, document not saved.
Yeah, let me try, see what's going on here. Did yours never work, Lauren? Not once?
No.
Okay.
I had to close the other PDF document and run one.
Yeah, that's what I just tried here. I think it's trying to save it as a name with one open. And I think that's why it's getting the error. So let me try it again here. I'm going to do Control R. Yeah, that's why I'm getting that runtime error.
Oh, mine did it when I closed it.
Yeah. So because we're saving it as the same name, when you try to save something that's already open the same name and get that error, well, you can interface with it because you're a human. You can say, yeah, I know, just overwrite it. But when it's a code like that, it can't really, unless you program it in, deal with it. So that's why you're getting a runtime error. Does this make sense? So what I want to show you is I want you to go to the Developer tab, and I want you to click on View Code. Okay, this is kind of like the back view of Excel. And the way this works is there's all these objects, okay? And I'm not going to get into like an object-oriented language discussion here, but the workbook itself is an object. Every sheet is an object. Within those sheets, there are cells. Every cell is an object. A row is an object. So everything is objects, and these objects have properties that can be changed. Like you can change the property of a cell to, the index color to be red. You can change the font size to 15. When we talk about like object-oriented programming, you think about it, we're all human objects, right? And we all have different properties: gender, male or female, hair color, whatever those might be, eye color, height. Those are properties. So the same thing is true in Excel. If we go under modules, click under modules, and then module 1, and double click, it should show you on the right-hand side a subroutine called PDF receipt, okay? And you'll notice when I see blue words, like blue words are what we call reserved words, meaning they're not just words that I made up, they mean something. So the subroutine PDF receipt, okay, it's like a function, and you'll see at the bottom, it says end sub. Okay, so end subroutine. So this is some code that does something. Anytime you see a tick mark and it's green afterwards, it's always going to be green mark, those are called comments, right? So comments aren't code themselves, they're just used to talk about the code. So it says, hey, remember this was the thing we put in, the keyword shortcut is Control-R. So a couple things, and there's a lot here that I want to show you, but look, the first thing it says, let's ignore that for now. I think I scrolled down so it captured that. I really didn't need to do that. But it says, the first thing it says, select the range A18 to F37. So it says, take the object A18 through F37 and select it. That's a method. Okay, that's a method that we do. Then you remember we set the print area. So it says, in the active sheet, in the page setup, set the print area to that range, A18 to F37. Some things there. This is doing that spacing that we talked about. I think we were like spacing it. Now, application per communication is true. Export is fixed format in PDF format. And there's the file name. This is the path I saved it to. C users workstation desktop registration receipt.pdf. So the problem with recording this macro, and this is why we're going to have to edit this, if you think about this, say I want to save everyone's receipt in a certain folder, right? So Jimmy comes in and he registers, and then Jill, and then Janie, and then Joe, and I want everyone's receipt to be in a folder, but I want those all to have a different name. So the way I have it now, every damn one of them is going to be called registration receipt.pdf. That's problematic. So some of you have taken some programming classes. What would I do so that I could save it as, I don't know, John Miko receipt.pdf? What would I have to do? Vega, what would I do?
Like somehow get that name on a variable?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that later, but there are things called variables. So I would have to capture that variable, which I could easily do because it's in the worksheet itself, right? It's a field. And I would say, save this as, and I would give it this same path or wherever the hell I wanted to save it, but then I would say, but the name of it is that variable name, John Miko, / register or dot register or underscore registration.pdf. Okay, so this is the code it's creating, which is a good start. And then you see at the very end, it says range A1.select. It means it's changing that to select that cell. Let's change this PDF. Okay, let's change this, not PDF, let's change this. So at the end, let's say, instead of putting the mouse back at A1, let's change it to B5. So for some of you, this might be your first time ever changing code, which is kind of exciting, right? So we're in this code now. I got to make sure I have this thing closed. If it's open, I don't think I have it. Okay. And then up here you see a play key. See that play key? So play it. And it's going to run that. Create my new PDF receipt. I'm going to X out of that. And then if I X out of my code window, you'll see it's selected not A1, but B5. Does that make sense? So I changed it, right? So I recorded that macro, then I went in and changed the code. Let's do something else with that. Let's go to view code again. Let's go under modules, module 1. Let's do range 5. Let's do range. Let's do something where I don't have anything. Let's go to B33. Okay. And all I'm doing is saying, all right, take the range B33, and after I hit the dot, you guys put a dot there, some things come up. You guys see this, right? So these little orange things, I don't know, what looks like a brick being thrown, or green things, those are called methods, right? Those are like things I can do to this range. Like I can allocate changes. I can apply names. So I could give it a name, I could apply a name from here. I could do a autofill. I could do an auto outline. The things with the little hands, those are properties. So let's do, I don't know, let's see if there's a color. Now let's do font. So do font. Let's do font color index, and these are like index colors. Let's set that equal to 3. So in programming, what this is really doing is it's not saying this is equal to 3, it's saying assign 3 to this property. So I think 3 is like green. So this is, if you will, picture this is like an arrow that's sending 3 that way. That's on the bottom. And then while we're at it, let's change what's in B33 to so we're going to make it whatever that color is. And let's say hello. So I just want to show you like how I can manipulate things behind the scenes. Range B33, font color 3, and I'm also putting hello world in there. Does that make sense? So, I don't know, did I close out my PDF last time? Yeah, it looks like I did. Let's play it. Okay, it creates my PDF. I'm going to X out of that. X out of the code window. Let's go to B33. And a couple things happen in B33 because I coded it as such. Hello world got put in the B33, and the font color got changed to index color, which I guess 3 must be red. I thought it was green, but it's red. Does it work? Okay. Let's go in there again. And we're going to do more of this later, kind of toward the end. But I want to show you something else. We could also interact with kind of the user. Let's just do MSG box. That's a function that does something. It puts up a message box, MSG box. There's different attributes to that. Let's just use the prompt attributes, and I'm going to write in there, hello how are you? That's closed. I'm going to play it. I'm going to print my thing. And, uh-oh, I don't like that. It says, puts up a message box that says, hello, how are you? Okay, and it changed that thing. So you understand what I can do, what I'm doing here is what's one of the beautiful things. I mean, I've loved programming since I was like, you know, I'm that kind of geek, since I got my first Commodore 64. And what's kind of great about programming, and I know some of you have some programming classes, is you can kind of create, right? I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician, I'm not a good author, but you can, with programming, you can create neat things, right? You can create something brand new that is very useful. And there's a lot of, you know, you can take a lot of pride in doing something like that. Now, let's X out of this, the code window anyways. And I want to show you something else. So if I give this over as an application to someone, you know, obviously I don't want them to have to go in the developer window, turn on the developer window, and click run macro, right? And find the macro. I want to create this as easy as possible. So I'm going to go up here to, I'm in the developer tab. See this little toolbox with a little wrench and a screwdriver perhaps. Click on the drop down, and there are what we call controls, okay? Form controls and ActiveX controls. And it's ways we kind of interface. And some of these controls are similar. You've seen checkboxes before. That's a common control. This little thing here is an option button, right? You've seen that, like, you know, yes or no. And if you push down, it's called radio button as well. If you push down yes, the no goes off. Text boxes. What we want to use is that first square. You see that first square? Click on that first square. It's called a command button. And you'll notice when I bring my mouse down here, it is now a cross. Excuse me. And I'm going to just left click and draw my command button. Okay. And it knows, hey, you're making a command button, so do you want to assign a command to that button? Like when someone clicks on this button, do you want it to do something? And I'm going to say, sure. I'm going to assign the command, the macro PDF receipt. And I'm going to click OK. So it has a terrible name. No one wants to be called button 6. So let's double click on that and change it to print receipt. Let's use our alt deal and I don't know. We will position it so that it's in A, was that A14, A16? And let's make sure this is closed. I think it is. But what's nice now is if I mouse over, if I give this to someone, they enter the information, they want to print the receipt, I can click on print receipt, and they don't have to do Control-R, they don't have to do developer macro, they click on print receipt, and it does the action of that macro. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes. And does the hello, how are you? Now we can assign code or macros to various objects. So let's do this. Let's let's say we want a button for them to go to, I don't know, the next page or the next sheet. So I'm just kind of winging this, but let's go to insert here. And let's go to online pictures. And let's find a arrow picture. let's pick this arrow. I don't know, pick whatever arrow you like. And I'm going to click insert. Okay. Now, I want to put code on that, in that button that'll go to the next page. Okay, so here's what I can do. Let's record a macro that goes to the next page. So I'm going to go to the developer tab again. I'm going to click on record macro. Let's just call this next page. We won't give it a shortcut key, and we're not going to give it a description. It's pretty simple. I'm going to click OK. You notice I'm in record mode. Let's go to registration data. And yeah, leave it at A1. Select A1. And then hit stop. Let's see what code we captured by doing that. Go to View Code, go under Module 1. Now we'll see our original macro, our sub PDF receipt, but down below you'll also see another macro that says next page. And all it does is it says go to the sheets. Sheets is a object. Go to the registration data sheet, select it. Within that, go to A1 select. That's all it's doing. It's doing two methods on two different modules, right? So I still don't have it assigned anywhere. So let's X out of this. Let's go over to receipt. Let's right click on our arrow that we put in. And do you see where it says assign macro? Click assign macro. And we'll assign next page to it. So click OK. Now if I mouse over the arrow and hit next page, it goes to the next page. Okay, which is kind of nice. So whatever I want to do to make this an application, navigation, I can do those kinds of things. Now, how else can I use this? We're gonna do another macro, but how else could I use this? Well, let's say I'm doing some kind of I've come up with some kind of ranking tool or algorithm, or something where I'm trying to say, like, I'm trying to predict student success, right? And I've come up with my own proprietary formula for doing that. And I look at grade point average, I look at extracurricular activities, perhaps I look at where you're from, I look at, I don't know, just say there's a bunch of different attributes that I look at, right? And maybe I have in this worksheet, I have 1,000 students, and I want to figure out this attribute. Maybe not just in this worksheet, but this is something that I want to do over and over and over again. And I want to make it useful to other people because I think they're going to do it. What I can do is just like when we type in, if we type in equal sum, if we think about it, what equal sum is a function that someone developed code for that says whatever the hell you put in sum, add it together and change that cell property to the result. Does that make sense? That's a function. So I could create a function called, I don't know, student success. And I could feed it these variables and it could come out with a student success variable from 0 to 100. You know what I'm saying? So I can create my own function. So you're not, even though Excel has all kinds of functions you use. And we're going to talk about other financial functions like net present value, internal rate of return, return on investment, all the depreciation methods that you might want to use. We'll do that in the next module. But maybe there's something that you came up with. You say, I want to use this, but not just one time. I use this over and over again. And I don't want to have to replicate that code every time. So I'm going to build a function that does that, right? And it's standardized. So this, you can create your own Excel functions, which is pretty cool, right? We'll do that a little bit later, but I wanted to make you guys aware of that. So let's leave that alone for now, okay? It wants us to do another macro. So it wants us to transfer data. Yeah, let's see the steps involved in that. All right, so let's go to the Developer tab, click on Record Macro, and let's call this macro Transfer Data, and let's give it a shortcut key of T, lowercase t. Click OK. So let's go to the receipt worksheet. We never did that, did we? It wanted us to, in this transfer area, we didn't do this, did we? We didn't put anything in the transfer. You guys don't have anything there either? All right, let's stop our macro. I missed that part. So go to this transfer area. This is hopefully you stopped your macro. In A40, put equal, and we should be able to do easily to do because we have defined names. Put the guardian there, the telephone here, the youth name here, the activity here, grade here, and the shirt size here. So once you have that done, go to the Developer tab, go to Macros, and let's delete that transfer data because I started recording it but didn't finish it. So get rid of the old one, the one we started. What we're going to try to do here is, as I register kids for this youth soccer league, I want to create, in this registration data, I want to create a file of all the kids that register, right? So the first kid that registers is going to be row 2. The second kid that registers is going to be row 3. Third kid that registers row 4. Do you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I have a listing of all these kids. Does that make sense? So let's go back to the receipt. Let's do record macro again. You transfer data. Control T and click OK. Okay, so it wants us to select A40 through F40. Click the Home tab. Click the Copy button. Click the registration data. select A1. Then press Control and the down arrow. Okay, that always takes us to the last row with values. Click the Developer tab ribbon. And we want to say use relative references for this next step. So what it's telling us is relative to where you are, always do this. So click on use relative references and see how it's on. Press the down arrow. Click off use relative references. Go to the Home tab. And I want to paste, but I want to paste the values because I don't want the references. So go down to Paste Special, Paste Values. And let's go back to the Receipt tab and select A1 and then stop. All right, so let's try it. So I think what do we have down here? Let's change some of the things. So the guardian name, I'm going to change to John. The youth name to Susie. The grade level change to G4, and the shirt size will change to small. Okay, so I'm registering another kid. If I go over to registration data, you see we have 2 records right now. I'm going to do Control T. Now it doesn't look like anything happened, but hopefully I go to registration data and now I see a new row that says, hey, you know, we just added John, right? So he has a new record. If I want to give them a button to do that, I can do that. So go up to Developer tab, go to Insert. Let's put a little button next to Print Receipt. Assign it to Transfer Data. Let's call the name Transfer. Change the youth name, let's change the guardian name. Let's click transfer, and it looks like it added it. If you want to make money like Vegas. So now, if I actually made this into, like if I made this for my youth soccer league, right? I'd have to realize that the people using it aren't maybe very technical, not as smart as you as far as Excel goes. So a couple of things I would do. I would, if you think about it, the things we learned, we would turn on protection, right? So that they could only access these fields. We would use data validation so they were drop downs, yes? And I would probably not have 2 buttons so that every time they had to do print receipt and transfer, I'd probably have a button that says, you know, submit registration. And that submit registration button would do both of those things. It would print the receipt and transfer the data. Further, what it would also do is maybe clear all this, right? Clear all this so that they don't accidentally submit it twice. And also put up a message box that says, registration submitted, thank you, or whatever it might be, okay? So you think about that, this is how we can take, a tool like Excel and build something, a little package for someone that is very useful. Now, what I want you to try to do is click File, and it's not going to work, and do Save, because you've been saving this somewhere, and it's going to yell at you. It's going to say, hey, you now put workbooks in here, so if you want to save it, you have to denote it as, excuse me, as a special format called a macro-enabled workbook. So I'm going to click No, because I don't want to lose my macros that I just worked so very hard on. So I'm going to click No, and I'm going to do Save As. I'm going to save it to the desktop. And when we do a Save As, we can save it as different formats. And XLSX is my, plain Jane workbook. What you want to save it as is Excel macro-enabled workbook. So you see that XLSM. I'm going to click on XLSM. I'm going to save it on my desktop. And let's X out of it. Let's close it. And now you see it on my desktop up there with the, it looks like an Excel, but it also has that exclamation point, like, because it's excited because it has a macro in it now. If I double click on it, Excel is going to tell me, because that's the option that I put into my Excel, you see security warning, there's macros in this. They've been disabled because we may not trust it, but maybe you do trust it. So I would click Enable Content. Okay, and now my macros are good to go. All right, so we are out of time, but I think we're pretty much done with Module 7. I think you guys have Module 6 stuff due today. Module 7 stuff I don't have due until after break. I'm not sure I'm trying to think of the best. I don't want to go too far ahead, but I want to use class time. So I'll think about what we're going to do Wednesday and Friday. We may do some tangential stuff, meaning not Module 7 stuff and not Module 8 stuff. There's some appendix items in the back with like text files and things like that. I may pick up some of that. Okay, I might throw that in for Wednesday and Friday. Okay. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.